Imagine giving everything you have for someone you love. Your time, your sweat, your dreams, all invested in their future, believing it's your future together. But what happens when that future arrives, and you're told you no longer have a place in it? This is a story of a love that was built on sacrifice, shattered by ambition, and saved by a chance encounter at 30,000 feet. This is a story of Michael, Sarah, and the day he discovered that the woman he was meant to be with was not the one he was fighting for, but the one fate placed in the seat beside him. You know, in life, we all have a dream that gets us out of bed in the morning. For some, it's a fancy car, a big house, or a famous name. But for a young man named Michael, his dream had a name, and it was Sarah. Picture him with me. Michael. His hands were not soft. They were maps of hard work, callous and strong from days spent mixing cement, lifting boxes in warehouses, and whatever honest job he could find. He didn't wear suits. He wore dust and sweat like a second skin, and he wore it with a quiet pride, because every ache in his muscles, every long, tiring hour, was a brick he was laying for a future he believed in. That future was Sarah. They grew up together. Two kids from the same small, forgotten town where dreams often got stuck in the mud. But Sarah was smart. She had a light in her eyes, a fire for learning that Michael adored. He saw in her a way out, a way up, not just for her, but for both of them. I remember him telling me about the night he made her the promise. They were sitting on the old wooden swing in her parents' yard, looking up at the stars, which felt like the only things in their world that shined. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft but sure, You go to the city, you go to that university. You study, and you become the brilliant woman you're meant to be. Don't you worry about a thing. I've got this." And he did. He had it in a way that would break your heart. While Sarah moved to the city and started her classes, Michael stayed behind. His world became a cycle of dawn alarms, packed lunches, and a worn-out ledger where he tracked every single dollar. Rent for her small apartment, check. Tuition fee, check. Books, check. Money for her to have a coffee with friends, check. He'd call her every evening, sitting on the floor of his own tiny room because he'd sold his bed to cover a surprise textbook cost. "How was class?" he'd ask, his body tired but his spirit soaring just to hear her voice. "It was amazing, Michael. We're learning about things I never even knew existed." He'd close his eyes and smile, painting a picture in his mind of her in a lecture hall, her mind expanding, flying. That was enough for him. Her success was a success. Her happiness was his reward. But slowly, the seasons changed, and so did the sounds on their calls. The city started to leave its mark on her voice. She'd talk about parties he wasn't at, about friends he'd never met, about professors with important names. Her words started to include phrases like, "You wouldn't understand," and "it's a city thing." A tiny, cold seed of worry began to grow in the pit of Michael's stomach. He'd water it down with logic. "Of course she's changing," he'd tell himself. "That's the point. She's growing. I'm helping her grow." Then, one rainy Tuesday, the call came. Her voice was different. Bubbly, electric, talking a mile a minute. "Michael, you won't believe it. I got it. The internship." "Internship?" he asked, wiping the grime of the day from his face. "At Kingston Holdings. It's like the biggest company in the country. It's a huge deal. Mr. Kingston himself practically runs the city." He felt a surge of pride so strong it almost erased the fatigue. "That's incredible, Sarah. I knew you could do it." But then she kept going. "The people here, they're just on another level. The clothes, the cars, the way they talk, it's a whole different world." That cold seed in his stomach twitched. Her voice was filled with a wonder he hadn't heard since she first talked about them. Now that wonder was for a world he wasn't a part of. That night, lying awake, an idea was born in his heart. A stubborn, beautiful, foolish idea. He would surprise her. He would scrape together every last dollar he had saved for their future, their real future, and he would buy a plane ticket. He would show up at her fancy internship, not as a burden from her past, but as a living reminder of the love that built her future. He would bridge the gap himself. It took everything. He emptied the secret jar in his closet, the one labeled Our New Beginning. He counted the bills over and over. It was enough. Just enough. The morning of the flight, he put on his best pair of jeans and a clean shirt. It was simple, but he made sure it was ironed. He looked at himself in the mirror, a simple man with a powerful love, and he smiled. He was going to see his Sarah. As the plane lifted off the ground, carrying him away from the world he knew and into the glittering, unknown city, Michael pressed his forehead against the cool window. The world below got smaller, and his hope grew larger, filling his entire chest. Down there, somewhere in that sea of lights, was the woman he loved. He was coming to remind her of who they were, of the promise they made under the stars. He had no idea that the most important person he would meet that day wasn't at his destination, but in the seat right next to him. So there was Michael, buckled into seat 16B, a man carried by hope. The hum of the airplane was a lullaby of possibility. In his mind, he was already there, already seeing the shock on Sarah's face melt into that beautiful, familiar smile. He played the moment over and over, a perfect scene in his head. He barely noticed the person who slid into the window seat beside him. It was a woman, probably around his age, but the energy she brought with her was like a small, tense storm. If Michael was calm anticipation, she was pure, crackling pressure. Let me describe her to you. This was Chloe. She wasn't just dressed well, she was dressed importantly. A sharp, elegant blazer, hair pulled back in a way that was both simple and severe. But her eyes were the most striking part. They were intelligent, yes, but they were also tired, deeply tired. She carried the weight of 1,000 decisions on her shoulders. The moment she sat down, she was working. A laptop open, paper spread on a small tray table, her phone buzzing with a quiet, persistent urgency. She sighed, running a hand over her forehead, and a folder slipped from her lap, spilling a few documents into the space between their seats. Without a second thought, Michael bent down. "Let me get that for you," he said, his voice a gentle rumble amidst the sterile airplane noise. He gathered the papers, carefully straightening them before handing them back. She looked up, a little startled, as if she just realized another human being was sitting next to her. "Oh, thank you," she said, her voice softer than he expected. It had a refined, polished quality, but it also held a thread of stress. "It's no problem," Michael smiled. "Looks like you're carrying a whole office with you." She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Sometimes it feels like I'm carrying the whole company." The plane leveled off, and the seatbelt sign dinged away. An awkward silence settled between them, filled only by the rustle of her papers and the steady hum of the engines. Michael went back to his thoughts of Sarah, but he could feel the tension radiating from the woman next to him. It was a feeling he knew well, the weight of responsibility. After a while, she let out another frustrated sigh, staring at a complex-looking graph on one of her papers. Michael, not one for awkwardness, decided on a simple, human gesture. He offered her the packet of cookies from his in-flight snack. "Here," he said, "might not solve the company's problems, but it's hard to think on an empty stomach." She stared at the cookies, then at him, a genuine, surprised smile finally touching her lips. It transformed her face. The severity melted away, and for a second, she just looked young. "That's very kind of you. Thank you." She took one. "I'm Chloe." "I'm Michael." They ate in silence for a moment before she gestured to papers. "It's just a new market analysis. My father's advisors are convinced one way, but my gut tells me something completely different. It's like they're looking at numbers on a screen, not at real people." Now it was Michael's turn to be surprised. He leaned slightly, glancing at the document. It was about the potential for a new retail service he squinted, in his very own hometown region. He couldn't help but let out a soft chuckle. Chloe raised an eyebrow. "Something funny?" "It's just," he started, a little hesitant. "Those numbers there, the projected growth? They're wrong." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me? And how would you know that?" "Because I live there," Michael said, his voice gaining a quiet confidence. "I deliver to those towns. I know those people. Your advisors are looking at average incomes, but they're not looking at the community. There's a big factory that's about to shut down. Hundreds of people will be out of work. In 6 months, no one in that area will be spending money on a fancy new delivery service. They'll be worrying about putting food on the table. He pointed a callous finger at another part of the document. But this part here, about expanding the logistics hub further east, that's your gold mine. The roads are better. The farms are thriving, and they're desperate for better connections to the city markets. Your numbers are too low. The demand is twice that. Chloe was utterly still, her eyes fixed on him. She wasn't offended. She was fascinated. This man, in his simple clothes, with his gentle demeanor, had just cut through 100 pages of corporate analysis with a few sentences of pure, on-the-ground truth. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Just a guy who pays attention," Michael said with a shrug. That's when the real conversation began. They talked for the rest of the flight. He told her about the different towns, the local economies, the spirit of the people. He spoke with a wisdom that didn't come from a textbook, but from life, from watching and listening and surviving. And Chloe, for the first time in a long time, felt like she could breathe. She found herself telling him things she never told anyone. The immense pressure, the feeling of being constantly judged. And then she said something that shocked him. "My father, he's built an empire, but his will has a condition, a marital clause." She looked out the window at the endless blue. "To inherit and run the company, I have to be married. He doesn't want his life's work to be managed by someone alone. He thinks a partner provides stability." Michael was silent for a moment. "That's a heavy thing," he said finally, "to tie your heart to a business deal." "It's not about a business deal for me," she said, turning to look at him, her gaze intense and sincere. "It's about finding someone real, someone with integrity, someone who sees me and not just my last name." She paused, and her next words were careful, deliberate. "Someone responsible, kind." In that moment, the air between them shifted. The unspoken question hung there. It was a question of possibility, of a chance meeting that felt like more than chance. But Michael's heart, his loyal, steadfast heart, belonged to someone else. He gave Chloe a sad, gentle smile. He picked up his phone, which had been resting on his leg, and turned it on. The screen lit up, revealing his locked screen, a slightly faded, cherished photo of him and Sarah, arms around each other, laughing in the sunshine of a simpler time. "My heart," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "is already spoken for." Chloe looked at the photo. She saw the pure, unguarded joy on his face. She saw the love, and in that moment, her own flicker of hope was replaced by a profound, aching respect. Here was a man who had nothing, by her world standards, and yet he was richer in loyalty than any billionaire she knew. They landed with a gentle bump. As they gathered their things, Chloe slipped a simple, elegant business card from her wallet. "Regardless of everything, it was a pleasure to meet you, Michael. If you're ever in the city and need anything." She left the sentence hanging. He took the card. Kingston Holdings. Chloe Kingston, CEO. His breath caught in his throat. The Kingston. Sarah's Kingston. He looked from the card to her face and simply nodded. "Thank you, Chloe. Take care of yourself." He watched her walk away, a solitary figure being swallowed by the busy airport, heading toward a life of gilded cages and immense pressure. Then he turned, tucking the business card into his back pocket, a forgotten token. His focus was back on his mission, on Sarah. He walked out of the airport, his spirit still soaring, completely unaware that the storm of his life was not ahead of him, but waiting for him, just a few miles away. The city air didn't feel like freedom. After the quiet hum of the plane, it was a jarring blast of noise and impatient energy. Car horns, 1,000 hurried conversations, the screech of distant trains. It was a symphony of chaos. But Michael, standing on the curb with his small, worn duffel bag, felt a bubble of calm around him. He was a man on a mission, and his destination was clear. The shimmering glass tower he could see piercing the sky a few blocks away. The Kingston Holdings building. He looked it up on a library computer back home. Seeing a picture was one thing. Standing in its shadow was another. The sun glinted off its mirrored windows, each one reflecting a piece of the sky, making it look less like a building and more like a monument to something unreachable. For a moment, the cold seed of worry in his stomach stirred. He pushed it down. This is for Sarah, he told himself. This is her world now, and I'm here to be a part of it. He'd bought flowers at a stall near the airport. A simple, bright bouquet of sunflowers. They were Sarah's favorite. She always said they looked like happiness. He held them now, a splash of vibrant yellow against his simple jeans and jacket, a beacon of his hopeful heart in the steel and concrete canyon. The lobby was a cathedral of wealth. The floor was polished marble so clean he could see his own reflection, a simple, out-of-place figure. The air smelled of expensive perfume and money. People in sharp, tailored suits moved with purpose, their shoes clicking a rhythm of importance. A security guard with a stern face sat behind a vast, circular desk. "Can I help you?" the guard asked, his eyes doing a quick, dismissive scan of Michael, lingering on the duffel bag. "Yes, hello?" Michael said, his voice echoing a little too loudly in the vast space. "I'm here to see Sarah Miller. She's an intern in the marketing department, I believe." "Name?" the guard asked, his fingers poised over a keyboard. Michael Adebayo." The guard typed, his eyes flicking to the screen. A slight frown. "I don't see you on her visitor list." "Oh, it's a surprise," Michael explained, a warm, nervous smile spreading across his face. "I'm her fiancée." The guard's expression didn't change. He picked up a phone, dialed an extension, and spoke in a low voice. "Ms. Miller? Security here. There's a Michael Adebayo here to see you. Says he's your fiancé." A pause. The guard's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see. Okay. Thank you." He hung up. "She's coming down." The minutes stretched. Michael stood by the desk, clutching the sunflowers, feeling the curious and judgmental glances of people passing by. He tried to stand a little taller. And then he saw her. Sarah stepped out of the elevator. And for a single, heart-soaring second, she was the girl from the swing under the stars. She was beautiful, dressed in a sleek, gray dress and heels, her hair styled in a way he'd never seen before. But the look on her face, it wasn't the shock of delighted surprise he'd dreamed of. It was a different kind of shock. The kind you get when something embarrassing and inconvenient has just landed in your lap. She walked over, her steps clipped and efficient. "Michael," she said, her voice low and tight. "What are you doing here?" His smile faltered. He held out the flowers. I wanted to surprise you." She didn't take them. She glanced around the lobby, a flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck. "This is not a good time. I'm working. My parents are actually here visiting. We're about to have lunch." "Your parents are here?" Michael's heart gave a little leap. He liked her parents. Or he thought he did. "That's great. I'd love to see them." Sarah looked pained. She let out a short, frustrated breath. "Fine. Just come with me. Let's not make a scene in the lobby." She led him not to a fancy restaurant, but to a small, sterile-looking break room on the main floor. It was empty, save for a table, a few chairs, and the hum of a vending machine. It felt like a place for difficult conversations. A moment later, the door opened, and her parents walked in. Mr. and Mrs. Miller. He remembered them as friendly, if a little reserved. But the people who entered the room were different. They were dressed in their Sunday best, clearly trying to impress the city. Their eyes fell on Michael, and the warmth he'd hoped for was nowhere to be found. It was replaced by a cold, hard assessment. "Michael," Mr. Miller said, his tone flat. "This is a surprise." "Hello, sir, ma'am," Michael said, nodding politely, the sunflowers feeling heavy and foolish in his hand. An awful silence filled the room. Sarah crossed her arms, not looking at him. "Sarah?" Michael's voice was soft, pleading. "Is everything okay?" She finally turned to him, and her eyes, the eyes he poured his soul out for, were like chips of ice. "No, Michael, it's not." She took a sharp breath. "I think you should go back home." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What? Why? I just got here. I used my savings to—" "Your savings?" She cut him off, a bitter edge to her voice. "Look around, Michael. Look at where I am. Do you really think your Your savings from those little jobs matter here. The cold seed in his stomach exploded, freezing him from the inside out. Those little jobs paid for your degree, Sarah. They paid for your life here. And I'm grateful, she shot back, though her voice held no gratitude. It was sharp, defensive. But that was then. This is now. We're not those two kids on the swing anymore. We've grown apart. Our standards are different now. The word hung in the air, ugly and final. Standards. Mrs. Miller stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's arm, her gaze fixed on Michael. She's right, Michael. You're a nice boy, but you have to see it. Sarah has a real future here. A future with people who can match her ambition. You just hold her back. You're a dead end. A dead end. The man who built the road was now being called a dead end. Michael felt the world tilt. The polished break room, the humming vending machine, the unsmiling faces of the people he considered family. It all started to blur. He was drowning in their disdain. So that's it, he whispered, his voice cracking. After all these years, after everything, I'm just not good enough for you anymore. Sarah had the decency to look away, a flicker of shame in her eyes, but was quickly smothered by her newfound resolve. I'm sorry, Michael. I am. But I have to move on. We both do. I've met someone else. Someone from the office. He understands this world. And there it was. The final killing blow. Delivered not in private, not with kindness, but in a cold, sterile room, in front of an audience, with the sunflowers, the symbol of happiness, wilting in his hand. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and the woman he loved was gone. In her place was a stranger, dressed in ambition and polished with shame for her own past. The dream he had carried, the future he had sweat and bled for, shattered into a million silent, screaming pieces right there on the polished floor. He was so lost in his own devastation. He didn't hear the soft click of the break room door opening behind him, but everyone else did. Their eyes shifted from him to the doorway. Sarah's face went pale. Her parents' smug expressions vanished, replaced by a look of sheer panicked deference. Michael, numb and broken, slowly turned. And standing in the doorway, her elegant blazer from the plane, now looking like a suit of armor, was Chloe Kingston. Her eyes, those intelligent, tired eyes, swept the scene. She took in Michael's shattered posture, the tears he was desperately fighting back, the scornful faces of the Millers, the pathetic, beautiful sunflowers clutched in his white-knuckled hand. Her gaze finally settled on Sarah, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. Michael, she said, her tone lace of protective, furious calm. Is everything all right? Room. The silence after Chloe spoke was thicker and heavier than any that had come before. Sarah's face, which had been a mask of cold superiority, drained of all its color. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her parents looked like statues, frozen in mid-snarl, their eyes wide with the dawning, horrifying realization of who had just walked in. Michael couldn't even process it. He was still reeling, his heart a raw, open wound. He just stared at Chloe, this impossible apparition from the plane, standing in the one place he was being most thoroughly destroyed. He saw her eyes, no longer tired, but sharp and clear as they took inventory of the devastation. They lingered on the unshed tears in his eyes, on the way his shoulders slumped under the weight of a broken dream. Miss Kingston, Sarah finally stammered, her voice a high, nervous squeak. She took a frantic step forward, a pathetic attempt to block the view of the scene. This is just a personal matter, a misunderstanding. He was just leaving. Chloe didn't even glance at her. Her gaze was fixed on Michael, seeing right through his brave front to the shattered man beneath. She took a few slow, deliberate steps into the room. The click of her heels on the tile was the only sound. It didn't sound like a misunderstanding, she said, her voice dangerously calm. She finally turned her head, and her gaze landed on Sarah like a physical weight. It sounded, from the hallway, like you were telling the man who funded your education that he was a dead end. Sarah flinched as if she'd been slapped. Her parents looked at their shoes, at the walls. Anywhere but at Chloe or Michael, "Miss Kingston, please," Mr. Miller began, his voice oily with false charm. "You have to understand this young man. He's from a different world. He doesn't fit into Sarah's future here. It's a simple matter of compatibility." Compatibility. Chloe repeated the word as if it were a foreign, disgusting thing. She gave a slow, cold smile. How interesting. She turned her body fully to face Sarah. "You know, Sarah, on my flight here today, I sat next to the most remarkable man." She paused, letting the silence build. He was kind. He was insightful. He looked at a complex market analysis for this very company, and in 5 minutes, saw a critical flaw that my entire team of highly paid, compatible advisors had missed. He didn't see numbers. He saw people. He saw communities. He possessed a wisdom you can't learn in any university. She took another step closer to Michael, standing beside him, not in front of him. A partner. An ally. And when the CEO of this company, the daughter of the man who owns his building, offered him the chance that most men would have sold their soul for, he gently declined. Her voice softened, filling with a reverence that made Michael's throat tighten. He showed me a picture on his phone. "Of you," he said. "My heart is already spoken for." He told me about his fiancée, how brilliant she was, how he was so proud of her. His loyalty was absolute. It was the most impressive thing I've seen in any boardroom ever. She let her words hang in the air, each one a hammer blow to the foundation of Sarah's new world. Sarah looked like she was going to be sick. The flowers, the sacrifice, the loyalty, it had all been laid bare, and in this new light, it didn't look like poverty. It looked like nobility. Chloe then turned to Michael. Her expression changed. The corporate mask fell away, and what was left was raw, honest admiration. "Michael," she said, her voice clear and resonant in the silent room, "the offer I made on the plane stands. But I'm not just offering you a job. I'm offering you a partnership. Your mind, your integrity, your understanding of the real world, that is what this company needs. That is what I need, not as a favor. But because you have valued these people," she gestured dismissively at the Millers, "are too blind to see." This was a turning point. The moment the narrative of Michael's life was ripped from the hands of those who sought to break him and placed gently back into his own. He looked from Sarah's horrified, regret-filled face to Chloe's hopeful, earnest one. He saw in Chloe's eyes not pity, but profound recognition. She saw him, not the laborer, not the fiancé, but the man. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the first full breath he'd taken since he walked into this building. The pieces of his shattered heart didn't magically mend, but they began to stir, rearranging themselves around a new, unexpected truth. He looked Sarah directly in the eye. There was no anger left, only a deep, weary sadness. "You were my future, Sarah," he said quietly, "but I guess I wasn't yours. I hope the world you chose makes you happy." He then turned to Chloe, and a small, genuine smile touched his lips for the first time. "A real partnership?" he asked. "A real partnership," she confirmed, her own smile finally reaching her eyes, banishing the loneliness he'd seen in them on the plane. He nodded. "Then I accept." Life has a funny way of closing doors, so loudly that it guides you to one that was always meant to be open. The wedding wasn't in a stuffy, high society ballroom. It was in a sun-drenched garden, filled with real flowers, not perfect, manicured arrangements. Michael stood not as a laborer and not as a puppet groom, but as a successful business partner, a man who had helped steer Kingston Holdings toward a more compassionate, community-focused future. The ideas he'd shared on the plane became the foundation of their most successful new division. When Chloe walked down the aisle, she wasn't the stressed, lonely CEO. She was a woman radiant with joy, walking toward a man who loved her for her mind, her heart, and her spirit, not her last name. And as for Michael, he looked at his bride and he saw it all. The chance meeting, the cruel betrayal, the stunning rescue. He saw that sometimes the greatest heartbreak isn't an ending. It's a redirect. It's the universe's painful but necessary way of moving you from the path you stubbornly chose for yourself and onto the one that was always destined for you. He had built his life on a promise for one woman, only to have that promise fulfilled with another. He learned that true value isn't in your job title, your bank account, or the clothes you wear. It's in the content of your character. It's in the strength of your loyalty and the courage of your heart. And in the end, the black boy who everyone thought wasn't good enough found his forever not by chasing someone who looked down on him, but by standing tall beside the one who always saw his worth.